I say, what are you doing in the Ponderosa? He doesn't know where he is. It's 1,000 square miles. I said, why don't we say, listen, where are you from, St. Louis? Great. How about staying with us for a week?
Everyone knew Lorne Greene as the calm, steady presence at the heart of Bonanza, the kind of man who seemed unshakable, dependable, and morally strong. On screen, he was Ben Cartwright, the wise patriarch whose quiet authority held his sprawling Ponderosa family together through storms, tragedies, and countless challenges. Fans admired him for his discipline, fairness, and the warmth he radiated from every scene, making him one of television's most beloved figures in the 1960s and 1970s. To the world, Greene seemed unflappable, a person who would never lose his cool or hold grudges. He was the moral compass of the show and, in many ways, a symbol of a more stable, simpler television era where heroes were noble, families were strong, and every problem had a solution grounded in ethics and understanding. Yet behind the cameras, away from the public eye and the bright lights of Hollywood, a very different story quietly unfolded. Lorne Greene, the man audiences thought of as calm and composed, had private frustrations, tensions, and conflicts that no fan or journalist could fully imagine. Over the years, Greene encountered co-stars, directors, and even Hollywood legends whose words, actions, or ambitions created rifts that left deep impressions on him. These conflicts were rarely visible on screen, yet they shaped his experience of the entertainment industry and his perspective on the television business. From creative disagreements to philosophical clashes over what Bonanza should represent, Greene often found himself in situations that tested his patience, his principles, and the careful balance he had cultivated on set. Each encounter, each disagreement, carried weight, quietly influencing the show's dynamics and shaping the way Greene navigated his work. What makes these stories fascinating is not only that Greene held grudges or carried resentment, but that he did so while maintaining professionalism, delivering performances that never wavered, and remaining the calm center of a production that thrived on the cohesion of its cast and crew. These tensions remind us that the behind-the-scenes world of Hollywood is rarely as neat and harmonious as it appears on television screens. For Greene, the challenges were not just about ego or personal slights. They were about defending a vision, protecting a moral framework, and maintaining respect for the craft of acting and the storylines that had become cultural touchstones. Over time, the accumulation of these experiences created a private list of grievances, people whose actions or words tested Greene's limits, pushed him into reflection, and sometimes wounded him in ways the audience would never see. From the philosophical disagreements with Pernell Roberts to the cutting remarks from major stars like John Wayne and Clint Eastwood, Greene's professional life was peppered with moments of quiet, simmering tension. And while he rarely expressed his frustrations publicly, the weight of these relationships influenced the way he approached each scene, each episode, and each decision he made as the anchor of Bonanza. In understanding this hidden side of Lorne Greene, we gain insight into not only the man behind the iconic character, but also the complex, often challenging world of classic Hollywood television, where appearances were carefully maintained, but personal feelings often ran deep, hidden beneath the surface. At the very top of Lorne Greene's private list of tensions stood Pernell Roberts, the actor who played Adam Cartwright on Bonanza. Unlike Greene, whose approach to the show was disciplined, measured, and focused on family values, Roberts had a very different vision of what television could and should accomplish. From the beginning, he questioned the format of the show, the simplicity of its storylines, and the idealized portrayal of his father's character. Where Greene saw a moral anchor, Roberts saw a polished, almost unrealistic figure. He believed television should challenge its viewers, explore moral ambiguity, and present complex characters with real flaws. Roberts often argued that the writing of Bonanza was too clean, too predictable, and that Ben Cartwright was a character who, while admirable, lacked the realism that made audiences truly connect with a story. These differences did not remain private for long. During early script meetings, Roberts spoke openly about his dissatisfaction, criticizing storylines, dialogue, and even the portrayal of family relationships. While other cast members remained quiet or nodded along politely, Greene listened carefully. He did not raise his voice or retaliate, but his posture, his facial expression, and the subtle tension that filled the room signaled that Roberts' words had landed deeply. Over time, Roberts pushed harder, questioning the authority Ben Cartwright held within the stories and challenging the way Greene approached each scene. One moment that reportedly defined their conflict occurred during a particularly intense meeting when Roberts slammed a script down on the table, stating that Adam could never grow as a character because his father's presence dominated every storyline. Greene's response was calm but firm. He explained that choosing family over rebellion was not weakness, it was strength. Yet even as he spoke, the divide between them deepened. The disagreement moved beyond personal preference or artistic vision. It became a matter of principle. Roberts continued to avoid promotional appearances with Greene, skipped charity events, and even distanced himself from the social obligations expected of the cast. Network executives attempted to mediate, quietly asking Greene to act as a peacemaker and keep the image of the show unified. For Greene, these requests were frustrating because they positioned him as the problem solver in a conflict he felt was undeserved. The tension spilled into public view in 1965 when Roberts gave an interview in which he openly dismissed the believability of Ben Cartwright. Greene, who had dedicated years to portraying the character with depth, discipline, and integrity, took the remark personally. It was no longer a philosophical difference. It felt like a direct challenge to the work he had devoted his life to. After that moment, Greene reportedly never truly forgave Roberts. While he continued to perform professionally on screen, the private resentment lingered, shaping his approach to other conflicts and his understanding of loyalty, respect, and authority in the entertainment world. This relationship illustrates that sometimes the most profound conflicts are not visible to the public eye. They are quiet, simmering, and carried in the hearts of those involved. For Greene, the rift with Roberts became a benchmark for every future conflict, a reference point against which he measured challenges, slights, and even the evolving culture of Hollywood television. Their story shows that disagreements over artistic vision, character portrayal, and moral philosophy can leave lasting impressions, even when the actors involved maintain a professional front. It also highlights Greene's steadfast dedication to his principles and the careful balance he maintained on a show that would become one of the most iconic family dramas in television history. Behind the laughter, the action, and the drama on screen, Greene's experiences with Roberts remind us that tension, conflict, and differing philosophies often shape the very stories we love, even if audiences never see them. The second name on Greene's private list of grievances might surprise many: John Wayne, the legendary cowboy of film who seemed larger than life to fans and fellow actors alike. To the public, Wayne represented strength, charm, and the very essence of the American West, but to Greene, certain moments left a mark that went far beyond simple admiration or professional rivalry. Their conflict was never loud, explosive, or openly dramatic in the way tabloids often describe celebrity disputes, yet it carried a sting that Greene reportedly remembered for decades. It began in part with an offhand remark Wayne made during a press conference in the mid-1960s, a time when television westerns were often compared, debated, and sometimes criticized for their portrayal of the genre. A reporter asked Wayne whether television was weakening the western, and Wayne, without hesitation, reportedly replied, "If you want the West without blood or guts, watch Bonanza." While the audience laughed and photographers celebrated the quip as a witty soundbite, Greene understood immediately that the remark was more than casual humor. It framed the show he had dedicated years to in a dismissive light, implying that television lacked the realism and grit of true cinematic westerns. The comment may have been intended as harmless fun, but for Greene, it cut deep. It felt like a judgment not only on the work he had done, but on the very moral framework and professionalism he believed television should represent. Weeks later, at a Beverly Hills charity event, Wayne's actions reinforced the tension. Approaching Greene in front of an audience of executives, donors, and press, Wayne reportedly slapped Greene on the back, joking about how easy television cowboys had it compared to real dust. Again, laughter followed, but Greene's reaction was subtle, A brief lowering of his eyes, a quiet internal acknowledgement that this public display was dismissive, undermining, and somewhat humiliating. What made this situation unique was the combination of Wayne's fame, authority, and timing. He did not attack Greene directly in words that could be debated or dismissed. Instead, he used subtle public gestures and comments to emphasize the perceived difference between cinematic heroes and television actors. Greene, for all his discipline and professionalism, felt the weight of that judgment. In the weeks that followed, radio shows and entertainment columns referenced the remark, framing Bonanza as commercial, safe, and polished, in contrast to the authentic Western Wayne embodied. NBC pushed Greene to respond in interviews, asking him to defend the show's approach and the integrity of his character. Each public explanation, intended to clarify or justify, only reinforced the sense of subtle humiliation. Wayne never softened his words, never clarified, and never showed any intention of smoothing over the moment, leaving Greene to carry the sting quietly. Over time, Greene described the experience in private as making him feel like an outsider, someone on the margins of the very genre he had helped sustain on television for years. Unlike a typical feud based on ego or clashing personalities, this conflict involved perception, reputation, and the subtle power of words in a public space. Greene's respect for Wayne as a legendary figure may have remained intact, but the personal impact was profound. It shaped his approach to future interactions, making him more guarded, more aware of the unspoken judgments that could come from peers, and more protective of his principles. The situation with John Wayne illustrates a key aspect of Greene's professional life: the tension between public perception and private conviction, between the image audiences cherished and the human emotions quietly felt. Even in the midst of fame, popularity, and professional success, Greene experienced moments of doubt, frustration, and quiet pain, moments that audiences would never see, but that defined much of his behind-the-scenes reality. For Greene, Wayne's words and gestures were a reminder that respect in Hollywood could be conditional, fleeting, and sometimes public, leaving private scars that endure long after the applause fades. The third name on Lorne Greene's private list of professional tensions was Clint Eastwood, a rising star in the early 1970s who had come to define a new kind of Western hero. Unlike Greene, whose Ben Cartwright represented steady moral authority, Eastwood's characters were harder, more ruthless, and increasingly popular with audiences craving grit, realism, and silent strength. Greene reportedly did not feel anger toward Eastwood in the way he did with some other co-stars, but the tension lay in what Eastwood symbolized: the replacement of a style, a philosophy, and a kind of hero Greene had spent years embodying. The first notable moment occurred in a press setting promoting Eastwood's film Dirty Harry. A reporter mentioned the old moral-style television cowboys, clearly referencing the kind of steady, principled heroes Greene portrayed. Eastwood, unafraid of contrast, leaned forward, smiled slightly, and remarked, "Real cowboys don't preach, they survive." On the surface, it was a calm statement, a line that many considered clever or witty. But Greene, upon reading it later, reportedly felt a quiet but profound sting. Eastwood's words suggested that the virtues Greene had portrayed, strength through guidance, patience, fairness, and moral authority, were no longer what audiences wanted. It was not personal criticism, but a judgment on an entire philosophy and era. Later, at a Universal backlit party, the subtle tension deepened. A casual question about television westerns prompted Eastwood to make another comment, describing the Cartwrights as the polite West while positioning himself as someone representing survival and realism. Greene was present, and while his face and demeanor did not reveal immediate reaction, those close to him noted a change, a recognition that the world of heroes was shifting and that the audience that once admired his style was slowly gravitating toward this new type of tough, self-reliant protagonist. Unlike public quarrels or dramatic confrontations, Greene's tension with Eastwood was almost entirely internal. He never confronted Eastwood directly and did not allow a visible clash to disrupt either man's professional reputation. Yet the impact was significant. Greene reportedly admitted privately to friends and colleagues that the feeling of being quietly replaced, of seeing the cultural taste shift away from the values he represented, was deeply unsettling. It was not about loss of ego or personal resentment. It was about relevance, the quiet erosion of an era he had helped define. In meetings with producers and directors, Greene noticed a subtle shift in attention. Eastwood was emerging as the embodiment of the modern Western, while Greene's principled hero was increasingly seen as nostalgic. The writing, the focus of episodes, and the way audiences discussed the shows reflected this shift, emphasizing tension between traditional morality and contemporary toughness. For Greene, it was an emotional challenge, a reminder that even the most respected actors could experience displacement when culture and audience preferences evolve. The experience shaped his understanding of Hollywood, fame, and the fragility of influence. Eastwood, with his understated confidence, had not attacked Greene personally, but in a way that mattered. He had replaced the world Greene belonged to. This silent but profound tension illustrates that conflicts in Hollywood are not always loud or visible. Sometimes the deepest struggles come from recognition, quiet observation, and understanding that the values you spent years representing are no longer in demand. Greene's relationship with Eastwood highlights his professionalism, his patience, and the subtle emotional labor required to maintain grace and composure even when the world seems to be moving on without you. It also reminds audiences that fame and respect do not shield anyone from cultural change, and that even the most disciplined and principled individuals can carry private wounds that are invisible to the public eye. The fourth name on Lorne Greene's private list of professional conflicts was Michael Landon, the actor who played Little Joe Cartwright, and perhaps the one who caused the deepest, most personal rift in Greene's career. Unlike earlier tensions, the conflict with Landon was not just about differences in philosophy or subtle public comments. It was about creative control, ambition, and the quiet but powerful shift of authority within the Bonanza universe. Initially, Landon was a co-star, a talented actor who brought youthful energy and charm to the show. Greene, however, was the anchor, the man who had maintained order, discipline, and the moral center of the Ponderosa for years. What made Landon's impact so profound was his ability to influence the direction of the show behind the scenes, often without formally announcing his intentions. Reports indicate that by the late 1960s, Landon had begun submitting scripts directly to NBC, bypassing traditional channels of production and oversight. These scripts emphasized emotional depth, modern themes, and storylines focused more on younger characters than on Ben Cartwright. While Greene's vision for Bonanza prioritized stability, family values, and consistent storytelling, Landon's scripts introduced changes that shifted attention away from Greene's character and toward new narratives. The first time Greene realized the extent of this shift reportedly occurred when Landon walked onto set holding an approval letter from NBC for one of his self-submitted scripts. Without fanfare, Landon tapped the letter on the table and remarked, "Looks like they're ready for something new." Greene froze, not in anger, but in